What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Studs and Duds, where we recap the best and worst performers from the prior NFL week. Before we hop in here, quick reminder, please do hit that like button. Also, if you're new to the series, what we do here is we go through the best and worst performers, as we mentioned, diving really deep into what players' stock is rising, stock is falling, who's helping their teams win, and perhaps leading to some losses. And while we do that, you will be seeing increases and decreasing on my Madden ratings for my own custom Madden roster. So that's what those numbers are all about. If you don't care about Madden, don't worry. They perfectly translate to how these guys are perceived by me in real life anyway. So that's what that's all about. Also, guys, probably going to be a little shorter this week. I'm fighting pretty bad cold or flu, whatever you want to call it. So energy level's a little down. Might be going a little faster this week. So let's get on in here. Starting with the Thursday night game, we're going to skip stars and duds and the Dave Gettleman Award this week. Honestly, there weren't huge standouts from where we had, and I want to keep this thing moving. So no stars, duds, and Dave Gettleman Awards of the week. Okay, so Dallas at Chicago, starting with the Dallas side of the ball. La'el Collins continues his dominant season. That was a great bargain by Dallas to lock him up when they did, getting one of the better right tackles in the league. He has developed real nicely there this year. Xavier Su'a-Filo, he's going up here, and he's been flushed into the starting lineup as Connor Williams, their young guard, is headed to IR. Williams was playing better as of late, but on the course of the season, Xavier Su'a-Filo actually has been a bit of an upgrade there at guard. Darian Thompson has come in and played some safety here at an okay level, so he continues to go up. And then on the interior here, Christian Covington, he's having a better season as a run defender this year than he historically has, so he's going to go up for that. He actually is not rushing the passer as well, though, as he once did in Houston. And then DeMarcus Lawrence has really not been the same guy. He's still a very good player, don't get me wrong, but we had him up there as one of the 5 best edge guys in the league, and he's been more of a top 10 to 15 guy this year. J.P. Holtz, as we transition over to the Chicago side, tight end getting involved here. They've got a lot of injuries at tight end. He's stepped up, especially as a blocker. And then Rashad Coward, this is an interesting player. He's been starting at guard. Kyle Long done for the year there, so they've been looking for an answer at right guard. And Rashad Coward is a guy that they converted from defensive line to offensive line, and obviously a project there, but it's playing out a little better. He's been a pretty good pass protector the last couple weeks, so definitely someone to keep an eye on there, a really good athlete to make that change. And then Mitchell Trubisky, we've talked a lot about him. He's playing much better, creeping up back towards where we had him heading into the year, around that 70 mark. You know, the first 12 weeks of the season, maybe 10 weeks of the season, he was miserable, but he's been much better here. Has actually looked like, quite frankly, one of the top-ish quarterbacks in the league over the last month. But that's the thing with Mitch is, can you trust that? We'll see. I personally do not, but you do got to give him credit. He's playing really well. He did still have a miserable interception in this Cowboys game, but for the course of the last month, he's been really solid. So he's going to go up. And then Kevin Pierre-Louis, he's a really good athlete. He's kind of that undersized college safety type of guy. He's been a special teamer, really a kickoff coverage guy for most of his career, but getting an opportunity to play a lot of snaps this week and really showed up in coverage. Could be a late career breakout kind of guy because he's always been a really fantastic athlete, and perhaps with the way the game has changed over the last 3 or 4 years with more of these speed linebackers, perhaps he could carve out a role as a starter in this league. We'll see. They've got some pretty major injuries at linebacker, so they would be very happy to see him step up, especially given the fact that the Bears are still trying to make the playoffs here. And then Eddie Goldman just hasn't been what he was last year. Still a really solid run defender, but was time to knock him down. All right, next game, Miami at the New York Jets. Lots of movement here for the Miami Dolphins. So Michael Dieter, a beloved guard prospect out of Wisconsin. I liked him a lot. Thought he was a steal for this team, and he's been a train wreck. He actually just got benched this week for a total nobody. I can't even think of the guy's name that they brought in instead of him, but he's been real bad. So he's going to get benched. He's going to take more of a developmental role on this team. We'll see if he's back next year as a starter. Who knows? Isaiah Ford, talk about developmental role. He's been on this roster or practice squad for about 2 years. I liked him coming out of Virginia Tech. Just hasn't been able to really get on the field. And a lot of injuries here ahead of him has allowed him for that opportunity. And he had a big game this week. So definitely someone to keep an eye on. This wide receiver core in Miami continues to just have guys break out seemingly throughout the season. And then Patrick Laird, I love his nickname, the intern. He was sitting down with some of the, interns at lunch, and they thought he was just part of the marketing team or part of the scouting team. And they're like, what's your role? And he's like, oh, I'm a player. And I just think that's a great nickname. But he's good. He's good receiving back here. Got some shiftiness out of the backfield. Good, smart receiver. So he's carving out a role for this team. He could be their third down back. Obviously not going to be a 3-down back kind of guy, but an interesting player. Christian Wilkins is playing much better. I never loved that pick, and he was always kind of a high floor, low ceiling kind of interior defensive lineman. He's been getting after the quarterback a little better lately and definitely stopping the run better, coming into his own late in his rookie season. He's a good player. I just don't know if he was the right pick at 13. And then the two safeties here that are kind of part of a rotation here out of nowhere. Steven Parker, a young player out of Oklahoma. He's been steady there. And then Adrian Colbert as well. They picked him up. Now, he's a little more intriguing to me because he's a uber athlete that was considered raw, has played some corners, played some safety. He was actually a pretty good safety in his rookie year a couple years ago for the San Francisco 49ers. So he's been stepping up there. We'll keep an eye on him. And then for the Jets, not a whole lot of excitement here, just some role players. James Burgess has stepped up with all of those linebacker injuries. Their top 3 linebackers, Mosley, Williamson, and Cashman, have all been put on IR at this point. So he's making the most of his opportunities here. And then in the slot, Nate Hairston, again, that secondary, they've been trying out new bodies all around the place. He had a pick this week. Nothing crazy, but again, just kind of making the most of his opportunities there. And then I do have a note here on Darryl Roberts. I like Darryl Roberts. He's played some corner. He's played some safety. He's never going to be a high-end starter at this point, but I do like his flexibility, and he had a good game at free safety this week. So I just wanted to give him a shout-out, even though his rating is not going to change this week. Next up, Washington at Green Bay. Terry McLaurin, outstanding rookie. Top rookie receiver this year, pretty clearly, even more than Marquise Brown for the Ravens. He made a one-handed catch in this game that was just special. Had to come back to the ball. It was thrown behind him. He just, twists his hips and one hand grabs it. Was pretty quiet outside of that. I thought when he went up against Jair Alexander did a good job covering him, but McLaurin still found a way to get his, as we saw with that one-handed catch, even though it was kind of late in this game. Meaningless football, but still, McLaurin's just having an unbelievable season. Was probably the biggest sleeper in the class that people were actually sleeping on, not necessarily those kind of draft Twitter guys that everyone likes, like say a Julian Love or whatever, or a Blake Cashman in my case. But most people were actually just legitimately sleeping on Terry McLaurin because he didn't produce in college. And then Hale Hentages, they picked him up from Indianapolis. He's been blocking, so he's going up. These two linebackers have stepped up with some injuries here. Cole Holcomb was noticeably effective in coverage this week. He's an interesting player. Good athlete out of North Carolina, 5th-round pick. They may have found something there. We'll see if he takes this starting role-ish and runs with it here. Jimmy Moreland, slot corner here, has played pretty well there. Nothing crazy, but he's going to go up. And then Simeon Thomas, an intriguing player here. He was a 6th-round pick from the Cleveland Browns a year ago. He ended up getting released there. He's like 6'3", can actually run pretty fast in a straight line. So he got about half the snaps at outside corner in this game and played pretty well. And then for Green Bay, Aaron Jones continues to be this team's best offensive player. He's just a completely well-rounded running back, and he, quite frankly, you can make a case that he's been this team's best wide receiver this year. Not running back, wide receiver, like outside as a receiver. Devontae Adams, he's not going down yet, but he actually has not been very good the last month and has dealt with the injuries. And who the hell else does this team have? So, I mean, you can make a case that Aaron Jones has actually been this team's biggest weapon as a mismatch problem, whether it is as a wide receiver or a running back. And that isn't even mentioning how good he's been as a runner as far as his vision and ability to create a lot of big runs out of nothing. The 3 tight ends are going to go up here. Green Bay has really tried to replicate that Kyle Shanahan system here, obviously with Matt LaFleur coming from that coaching tree, but also the fact that this team doesn't have any wide receivers. So they've got Mercedes Lewis has been really involved as a blocker. Jimmy Graham, as hard as we've been on him throughout the season, he has stepped up these last couple weeks, I would say. He's been getting open a little better. And then Robert Tonyan, just kind of a converted college wide receiver, is an interesting player here. They have an interesting skill set with those 3. You'd love for them to have more of a full-rounded tight end because all these guys have pretty specific skill sets. Perhaps Jay Sternberger, who's getting more playing time lately, could become that guy for this team. And then also Kenny Clark on the interior defensive line. He's been wrecking guys these last 2 weeks, and he's been a lot worse as a run defender, but he has been every bit as good, if not better, as a just menace as a pass rusher. So he's going to go up. And then Chandon Sullivan, he's going to go up plus 168 to a 69. He's just been very versatile. He'll play some strong safety, some slot corner. He's been a very sure tackler for this team and has helped limited big plays. And he hasn't been bad in coverage either. So he's been a nice find on the free agent block for a secondary that's needed some depth. All right, Detroit at Minnesota. Detroit's offensive line continues to play really well. Now, unfortunately, they don't have a top-end running back. They don't have a top-end quarterback to really maximize on that, but you got to give them credit, especially on the road against a good Vikings pass rush. So Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, they're going up for the second week in a row. Logan Thomas is getting some reps here now that TJ Hawkinson is done for the year, former Virginia Tech quarterback. He's actually been pass blocking a lot, which is interesting. You would think he'd be just kind of a weird mismatch problem in the receiving game. But anyway, he's getting more involved. I think he scored a touchdown this one of these weeks. And then Bo Scarborough, plus 169 to a 70. He's been playing well. He is looking like a solid power back. I think he's probably a guy that you look at as a compliment to, I always forget his name, Kerryon Johnson. So, I think you come back with this offensive line with Bo Scarborough as a good power back who's shown some burst, and then Kerryon. This is a pretty good running game. And these receivers and Matthew Stafford, this offense can make some noise next year. Just need Patricia to get that defense together. And then for Minnesota, Laquan Treadwell continues to get about 15, 20 snaps a week and making the most of those opportunities. He's grading out incredibly well. He's making a couple big catches here this week. And, he just is a guy that maybe took that slap in the face by reality getting released here, and then nobody picked him up. And then Vikings had a big need here, and they pick him back up. And he's maybe carving out a role on this Vikings team. He would need a contract extension to stay here, but they could use some wide receiver depth. So we'll see what happens with him. I don't know if he'll be a guy that another team looks at as a high upside free agent signing. I don't know. Interesting player for as we near the offseason. Quarterback Kirk Cousins getting a little love here. He's just playing well over the last 2 months of the season. So I think his ball placement's been really good. He's been taking care of the football and keeps leading this team to wins. So he's going to go up. And then the 2 tight ends here, Tyler Conklin, he's been getting involved here. And then Kyle Rudolph has really proved a lot of people wrong. And his blocking has been a lot better lately. He was really getting some push this week in the run game. And he's been a really good threat in the red zone as well. So he's a fine player. He's having, to me, the best year of his career as far as actually being like a useful tight end. He's made some good highlight catches throughout his career, but he's blocking better than ever. And he's been more sure-handed and a go-to target in the red zone, which that is something that serves purpose in the NFL. And then Shamar Stephen has been playing a lot here, has not been particularly good, but a veteran that's been not a liability, I guess. So he's going to go up too. And then one last note here, Mike Hughes, the first-round corner for the Vikings last year, they've gone with a full-on rotation at that, frankly, number 2 corner spot as Trey Waynes has cemented himself as the number one guy here. And then Xavier Rhodes is in a full-on rotation with Mike Hughes and Holton Hill. And it was Mike Hughes who played pretty well this week. And he's had his ups and downs here in his second year, but he could be due for a raise next week. And definitely worth noting that he very well could take that number 2 corner job away from Xavier Rhodes pretty soon. So next up, Cincinnati at Cleveland. For the Bengals, Cordy Glenn has come back from injury, which is a big boost for this offensive line that's been miserable this year. He's been pretty solid there at left tackle, so he's going to go up a little bit. Nick Vigil has developed this year, a veteran linebacker. He's a really good athlete, but his coverage has been pretty good this year. And then B.W. Webb, intriguing player, I guess. Like, he was a slot corner for the Giants, and they paid him way more than anyone ever saw coming. He felt like a league minimum kind of guy. But he's actually been playing outside corner for this team and doing it at a decent level. So looking like that may not have been the worst signing of all time. Plus 170 to a 71. And then Geno Atkins continues to kind of struggle here. He's going to go down 87 to an 86. He's going to be 31 starting next year. So I think just age regression there. It's not that he's been bad, just not as productive as years past. And then for the Browns, right guard Wyatt Teller. This was a good trade, I thought, to go and get him from the Bills. The Bills have a lot of offensive line depth, so they were willing to move on from Teller. But he's a good young guard who has graded out really well as a pass blocker ever since he came into the league. Not much of a mauler, kind of that, roadblock type of pass protector with good technique and really works well in short areas. But it's been a good fit here for Cleveland as they prefer to, have these pass blocking interior guys. And then Sheldrick Redwine is a 4th round pick out of Miami, and he's been starting now with Morgan Burnett going to, I'm assuming, IR, or he just hasn't been in there. He's been hurt. But Sheldrick Redwine is a player I liked out of Miami, and he's been playing well as a strong safety. He was more of a free safety in college, but he's been tackling really well, flying around, covering well. So second week in a row, he's going up. Justin Burris has been sort of a nickel linebacker / box safety for this team. He's been nice. And then Sheldon Richardson's having one of his better seasons, honestly. He's been very disruptive as a pass blocker and has really stepped up his discipline as a run blocker, run stuffer this year as well. And they need that because the rest of their D-line is just not very good, especially on the interior. Edge, Porter Gustin here, plus 165 to a 66. Surprised this guy wasn't drafted out of USC. He's just a good athlete. He's a big kind of linebacker edge type that played with good discipline and just overall was a physical player. So he's been a good fit here to help secure the edge a little bit in run defense. He actually came up with a sack last week, I think. And then Mack Wilson has really struggled this year. I liked him coming out. I didn't think he would fall to the 5th round. Some people thought he was a 1st-round player. I definitely didn't go there. I had a late 2nd, early 3rd-round pick on grade on him. He was an interesting player at Alabama. Very much a let things come to you type of linebacker. He showed some good length and ability to disrupt passes, but really didn't play with the instincts I liked to see, especially coming out of an Alabama linebacker where traditionally those guys are kind of badasses and fly to the football. That wasn't really the case with Mack Wilson, and it just hasn't worked out for Mack Wilson so far this year. He had a good first game of the season and a good preseason, but ever since then, he's been someone that teams have been able to target in the passing game, and also he just hasn't been playing good run defense, which I don't know if I expected him to do in the NFL anyway. So he's coming down here. And then Denver at Houston. People are going to be hoping for a Drew Lock boost here. I'm actually somewhat high on Drew Lock. So right now he's a 67, which is tied with Haskins and Daniel Jones. I think that's all pretty fair. He did play well here, and if he plays well again next week, he could very well go up. And then Noah Fant, plus 173 to a 74. He is really exploding onto the scene the last month, showing those receiving skills. Not blocking, but they didn't draft him to block. They drafted him to be a mismatch problem and more of a slot receiver anyway, kind of like that Evan Ingram type. These two safeties have been awesome. This is probably the best safety duo in the NFL this year off the top of my head. Justin Simmons has had an incredible breakout season. Both these guys are really flexible too. They both play some free. They both play some strong. So Denver has definitely gotten some momentum heading into next year. They're an exciting team. I think they could be a sleeper team for next season. Getting that safety kind of to be an elite duo there in the background of a good front seven. Like, I'm kind of excited about the future of this Broncos team, especially with Drew Lock playing the way he's playing. Jeremiah Atuachu is a former high pedigree player. Was a guy with a lot of first-round grades, fell to the second round. He's bounced around the league. He's played on the Chargers, the Jets. But he's playing some of his best football recently here in Denver. Been better in run defense than he has throughout his career. Vic Fangio, seeing a guy here that he can coach up. So he's getting some love. Isaac Yiadom had a very up-and-down season, had some hype in the preseason, really struggled early, lost his job to Devontae Bosby. Bosby goes to IR. Now Isaac Yiadom's back. He's playing a little better. So he's going to go up. He's a tough guy to predict how the future of his career is going to be, but they could really use him to continue to play well down the stretch here so they can have a little more confidence in him going into next year, especially if they're not going to be able to retain Chris Harris here. And then Mike Purcell, if we did a Dave Gettleman Award winner, it'd probably be him. He may have even won it earlier this year, but he's been dominant against the run. What a pickup that's been. Denver has traditionally been very good at finding interior defensive linemen, and they found another one here. So for the 5th week in a row, he's going up as a run-stuffing nose tackle. And then for the Texans, this was just kind of one of those weeks, kind of hard to evaluate. They just didn't bring much to the table this week, but it is time to lower Benardrick McKinney. He had a rough game in coverage this week. He's been struggling a lot over the last 6 or 7 weeks, so time to lower him. All right, San Francisco at New Orleans. Actually, not quite as much movement in this one as you might expect for it being such a crazy game. But George Kittle continues to go up. He's making a case for being the single best player in the NFL right now, especially with Aaron Donald has still been elite, but hasn't been that game break. I mean, he's been pretty game breaking, but he hasn't been that extra 3 steps above everyone else. So, George Kittle's been just a monster. Jimmy Garoppolo's really impressed me over the last month of the season. I think he deserves a lot of credit for how explosive that offense has been lately. Raheem Mostert as well, obviously. He's one of the fastest, most explosive running backs in the league right now. Kind of a one-trick pony. He needs blocking and good play calling to set him up, but get that man going and look out. He is a tough man to catch in space. Kendrick Bourne's been just kind of steady this year as a really rotational receiver for them, but a good weapon to have as depth. And then DJ Jones continues to play well in run defense. They could use more of a tradition, like they have it here in DJ Jones, but they're definitely happy to have more of a traditional nose tackle because they've obviously got DeForest Buckner there, but he's kind of a lengthy, weird pass rusher kind of guy. So to have more of a traditional boxy nose tackle is nice for them. And then moving on to the Saints, Shai Tuttle's going to be the only movement here. He's going to go +1 for the 2nd week in a row here, 71 to a 72. Continues to just play really well. Was a great undrafted pickup for the Saints here. He could have been a Dave Gettleman Award winner this week. I do have a note on Alvin Kamara. He's really just not playing well lately, and I know he's dealing with an injury, so I'm going to give him a few more weeks to kind of get healthy here. But definitely concerning. He's not making guys miss quite at the rate that he has over the course of his career, so could be due to get lowered there, Alvin Kamara. All right, Baltimore at Buffalo. Starting with the Ravens, so Bradley Bozeman, time for a little boost. He's been fairly steady there at guard. He's had some struggles when they do have to go to traditional dropbacks, but he's been a good run blocker for him and just been pretty solid. And then 2 guys on the edge for the Ravens. I got a good podcast question about how the Ravens are so good at developing these edge guys, and it really is they have a type, and Tyus Bowser actually isn't necessarily that type. He's more of a smaller finesse speed guy, but as far as Matthew Judon is concerned and some of these other guys, Jalen Ferguson is playing well lately. Part of the reason I think they're able to develop these guys so well is they know what they want with their scheme. We've talked a lot about Harbaugh having this organization on the same page as far as scheme and plan and development and really getting role players to do one thing very well. It's almost the Belichickian method. But Matthew Judon's the perfect example of that. They like these 6'4", 6'5" power rushers, and Judon, no different there. and he had one of his best games of the season here against the Bills. And then for the Bills, Devin Singletary continues to go up. There was a comment last week that someone thought I was maybe sleeping on Singletary's explosiveness a little bit, so I did keep an extra eye on that this week, and I'm sorry I'm not giving you a shout-out, whoever pointed that out, but I'm hoping you're watching here and can let me know in the comments below. But you're right. I think Singletary does show some better burst than maybe I was giving him credit for. I still don't necessarily see him as, Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey or anything crazy like that, even to a Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones type of deal, but he could very well be a 3-down. Well, I never said he couldn't be a 3-down back. I just, giving him some credit here. He's got some more explosiveness in there. He's going up again. You'll notice he's more athletic in the Madden roster moving forward. All right, John Feliciano at right guard has been a great breakout for them. They've brought in a lot of competition here, and I like what they did. I think they've shown kind of a blueprint for how you fix your offensive line. This was one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year. They draft Cody Ford. They signed Inseki. They signed the center out of, what's his name, from Kansas City. They signed some of these low-level free agents like John Feliciano. And they just kind of let these guys go to battle and try to figure it out. And it's worked out because Feliciano has emerged, and he continues to slowly climb as the season goes on. And then these two corners, I mean, we just talked about how this team did a great job really encouraging competition to get guys to develop better. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here with Levi Wallace and Kevin Johnson. I think Levi Wallace has had his ups and downs throughout the year, but ever since Kevin Johnson has gotten more playing time here, they've basically been rotating these guys. And they're both playing really well. They're kind of, feeding off of each other, I think. One guy will get a pass deflection, and the next possession, it's Kevin Johnson's turn, or it's Levi Wallace's turn, and they want to go and prove that they can cover well. So I like what's going on here in Buffalo. And then Carolina at Atlanta. So Kyle Allen, he's going to come down too. He's really floated between 60 and 64 all year. He's a backup type. He's just very aggressive, and it's led to some big games because, he kind of has that prove-it mentality, and he wants to make those big throws, and his arm is better than people give him credit for. But doesn't really process a whole lot, and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these games with high amounts of turnover-worthy plays. And just as most backup quarterbacks have, you're just going to get these stinkers where he's missing throws as well. So he's coming down. I think the Kyle Allen as the starter of the Carolina Panthers wagon has definitely run its course. He's going to be their backup next year for sure, unless it's someone else. But then James Bradberry and Dante Jackson had a couple good games earlier on in this year. Maybe it's just this team is kind of deflated without Ron Rivera out there. Very well could be the case, but they were starting to play poor before Rivera got fired here. And I talked about the Panthers on the podcast as well. Like their problems to me go well beyond Kyle Allen and their quarterback and their coach. I just look at this defense and I'm not very inspired by most of it. They have a good interior defensive line that's great, but their edge position to me is very up in the air. Burns is a good young player, but still kind of a project to me. You got Addison there, but he's like 30. And then these corners, I don't see either of these guys as true number ones. Jackson could get there, but, we saw him on All or Nothing. He's got some kind of personality issues, and I think that's leading to some of his lack of development here. And James Bradberry just isn't the athlete. He's kind of a Xavier Rhodes type, where he's a big physical guy, can win in the right matchups, but just going to struggle occasionally because he doesn't have the great quickness. And if the pass rush isn't working, when you have some of these bigger corners, that's when you see them struggle a little bit. And we've seen that the last couple weeks because this pass rush has not been very good. So then Atlanta, Olamide Zaccheaus, 5'8" receiver who can fly. He had a 91-yard touchdown this week, showing off that speed. Could be a flash in the pan or could be a role player here. We'll see. And then a couple notes on Chris Lindstrom has returned from injury, their first-round pick, and he's played really well at guard. He's been getting kind of aged in here, rotating, but good to get him in there. Caleb McGarry had his best game of his career. That goes to show you about the Panthers pass rush with those guys we just talked about. The rookie has best game of his career. So Atlanta's trying to figure out where their strengths are going to be for next year. It's obviously a team that's going to have some hope for next year, so it's good to see the right side of that line potentially in the last month of the year here coming together. And then Vic Beasley, another note, not going to move here, but he seems like a guy that's maybe playing for that contract, a la Frank Clark, Nick Perry, some of these edge guys that we've seen in the last few years really step up, nearing that contract. I don't know. I'm not really buying it. We'll see the next 3 weeks. We're just monitoring him. And then DeMonte Kazee, we lowered him in last week's episode, and he responded with a huge game this week. He's just a good player. He was like a 6th-round pick that really emerged as a good free safety last year. And like I said last week, I think he's going to turn it around. It was just maybe a hiccup year, but he might be turning it around at the end of this year. And then Foyesett Oluokun, as that rotational coverage linebacker here, is having an outstanding season, kind of under the radar. He's an intriguing player. Anytime someone comes out of Yale, Harvard, you want to say he's a smart guy. So we're going to give him that benefit of the doubt, but he is just an insane athlete. Like, just crazy. Like, he'd be a high-level athlete as far as, like, his 40 time and his cone work and all that stuff. Agility scores, whatever you want to call it. He'd be a high-end athlete if he was a free safety, and he's 6'2", 215, so he probably could play free safety. But really intriguing player. Atlanta really values these speedy linebackers. They don't really care how big you are. It's really about how fast you are. All right, Tampa Bay and Indianapolis. Starting with the Colts, Zach Pascal continues his climb. Super physical wide receiver, but he has been just kind of fed, and he's producing because of it. So he's going up. Marcus Johnson had a couple big plays this week. I don't know if there's a whole lot there, but he's stepped up. And then the linebackers here have been incredible. Darius Leonard has kind of re-reached that level he was at last year as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Maybe a bit of a slow start for him and has dealt with injuries, but 2 picks this week. He's got 6 sacks again this year. He's just a do-it-all linebacker, and it's just an outstanding player. Bobby Okereke as well. The Colts have done a great job finding linebackers, which is not easy to do. Coming out of Stanford, kind of similar things we said about Foyesett Oluokun. Coming out of Stanford, you'd assume he's a smart guy, but he's a really fast player as well. I did knock him for some of his lack of physicality in college, and he hasn't graded out great as a run defender, as a tackler this year, but frankly, I don't care about that as much if you can cover at the level he has, and he's done it here for the Colts. So I love what they have with their linebacker duo moving forward. I think both these guys as day 2 picks can really be the foundation of their second level of their defense for years to come. And then for Tampa Bay, Jameis going to get a little love here. Most volatile quarterback in the NFL. He's going to be who he is and not apologize for it. And that's what we saw this week. Explosive offense. He made some great plays. Also just terrible turnover-worthy plays as well. But when you can, create big plays more often than you turn it over, like way more often, then it can work. I think we do see Jameis back next year. I don't know if it's on a franchise tag or a new contract, but I've been saying it this week. Tampa Bay has me intrigued for next year, to say the least. The defense has stepped up a little bit lately. Obviously not this week, but for the most part they have. And this offense has colored me intrigued. Obviously these receivers and Jameis playing pretty well, but this offensive line, as you can see here, is playing much better. Earl Watford, I don't know if Alex Kappa got hurt or benched here, but Kappa's been very all year. Watford, more of a veteran, but he's been pass blocking pretty well there. Ryan Jensen, high-end free agent for them. He's starting to play closer to an elite level for a center, which is great. Donovan Smith, they paid him a lot in the offseason. He's having his best year here. So the offensive line giving you some hope for the future as well. And then on the defense, these young players, Carlton Davis, I've been hard on him. He's very similar to his divisional counterpart, James Bradbury. Everything we've said about him, everything we've said about Xavier Rhodes. I think it was on the podcast I said this week, Bucs fans are mad at me because I've been lower on Carlton Davis. I, in general, don't like big, stiff, slower corners. But it can work. If you have a pass rush, and they're very physical, which Carlton Davis has proved to be lately, it can work. I think as a number 2 corner is what I would say. I don't think Carlton Davis is ever going to come out and be, Stephon Gilmore, one of these top corners. I just don't think he's the athlete. But if this pass rush can work, and it's been working lately, and I think that's why he's graded out better, he can get in your face, he'll press you, and that's the thing with these big corners, is they have the length and the strength and press to take you out for a couple seconds. But if you let them have that reactionary move, if you let the receiver have a reactionary move, it's harder to stick with them. So to me, that's who Carlton Davis is. He's James Bradbury. He's Xavier Rhodes. If the Bucs get that out of Carlton Davis, you'd be very happy with that, and he's well on his way to kind of becoming that player. And then for Devin White, he's just making plays lately, getting beat a lot less in coverage, and he's coming into his own. It just takes time for these linebackers, I think, and he's coming into his own. Never really had any doubt that would happen, but he did have a rough start to his season. Moving on, the Chargers at the Jaguars. So for the Chargers, Phillip Rivers is going to get one of those overalls back. He's playing better lately. Still not having a good season, but deserves to be an 80. Scott Kessenberry, the center's been blocking better. A young player there who should be the starter next year, in my opinion. Unless, Pouncey's there, but maybe you kick Kessenberry to left guard or something. But Kessenberry should be starting next year. Michael Schofield's been a really dominant pass blocker for this team. They've struggled around him, but the fact that he has played well despite the tackle play here and the center play for the first 10 weeks of the season goes to show you that he's a pretty good pass blocker. He struggled as a tackle in Denver, but he's been kicked into guard, and that's clearly been a better fit for him. Safety, Rashawn Jenkins has had an outstanding season. Again, kind of a box safety build, but he plays free safety here and does it at a surprisingly high level. And I think he's happy to have his buddy Derwin there playing again in the box. So he's kind of breaking out this year a little bit. Could be due for a couple more boosts before the season ends. I floated between 72 and 73 for him. Drew Tranquill's been a really solid rookie here. Coverage has been but he does have very nice ability as a run defender. Good job, very good ability to find guys in the backfield and fly to the football. So he's been a good find for them. And then Melvin Ingram's going to come down. He's on the other side of 30 now and just hasn't been as productive this year. Still a very good player. He's had some big games this year, but hasn't been the same guy. So he's going to come down. Tennessee at Oakland. Ryan Tannehill, no surprise here. He's going up. You got to pump the brakes, or, not even pump the brakes, just move a little slow with guys like this who have been quarterbacks for about 5 years, and then he's playing kind of balls to the wall and has been killing it. So he is going to get his love here. I think Titans fans would say that's too low. Yeah, you're right. For the last 4 weeks, Ryan Tannehill's been much more than a 73 overall, but this is about how good are these guys going to play moving forward. I don't know. He's looked great, but we also have a lot of other tape on Ryan Tannehill that says he's not as good as he's playing right now. So we'll see how it all plays out. It looks like he's going to be back as the Titans quarterback next year. Then we got A.J. Brown. Clearly had no business falling out of the first round. New England Patriots would trade N'Keal Harry for A.J. Brown and maybe their first-round pick this year right now if they could. He's been outstanding. Just a do-it-all beast, deep threat, can catch and run blocks, everything you want to see. He's been outstanding. Titans have been good at getting these guys in the second round. A.J. Brown and Harold Landry last year, so credit their front office. And then the trade for Ryan Tannehill. I think it's one of the top front offices in the league right now. Anthony Ferkser, Jonnu Smith, part of a tight end rotation. Kari Blasingame, +3. So I actually had him at running back as kind of an interesting, versatile player. And he should have been at fullback the whole time, but when I flipped him over there, he was rated as a 74 by Madden. His blocking is to be determined, I guess, but, he made some unbelievable catches in this game. He looked like Odell Beckham out there, so he's got catching ability. He can run the ball, too. He looked pretty good in the preseason for the Minnesota Vikings, so interesting player there, Kari Blasingame. They got a lot of depth as far as their tight ends and fullbacks is concerned. Tajay Sharp has just continued to force his way onto the field. He's been kind of steady. Him and Adam Humphries, and he's just been competing with reps there, kind of making that Adam Humphries signing look like a bad one because you have Tajay Sharp there. And then Ty Smith, we talked about him last week as a guy that I was probably just sleeping on because he played about 250 snaps for the Titans in 2017 at corner and was fine. Like, he was pretty solid, was replacement level, if not a little better. And then he's played outstanding. He had an elite grade by PFF this week. But just really nice for this team who's trying to make a playoff run, loses Malcolm Butler, but they've had the depth in Ty Smith here to step in. So very nice for them to have that. And then for the Raiders, Foster Moreau had a good game here before, kind of a weird tackle, almost did the splits. He's done for the year here, but he had a good rookie season. He was one of my favorite players in the entire class. So wanted to give him a little more love before his season comes to an end here. DeAndre Washington, +3, 67 to a 70. Had a really nice run. One of the better touchdown runs of the season this week, and he's actually been pretty solid all year. I hadn't really noticed it because Josh Jacobs been so good, but Washington's been a good relief pitcher for this team, whether it's as a third down back or as an actual running back. He's been here for a while. I would think he's probably a guy that's going to hit free agency. He could be a decent signing. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Mike Davis. Obviously didn't work out for Chicago, but he got a decent contract to go there. So something like that, maybe, to a team that needs a backup running back. And then LaMarcus Joyner has just really struggled at slot corner. The Raiders paid him $10 million a year based on his play the last 2 years with the Rams where he played free safety. I don't understand why the Raiders, who need safety help, are sticking with him at slot corner. It's so dumb. Put him back at free safety. That's where he's been a good player. And you're paying him safety money. It's just dumb. And he's getting roasted as a slot corner. He's been one of the lowest rated corners in the NFL this year. All right, let's move on. Kansas City at New England. Just one player moving here for Kansas City. Travis Kelce, -2, 90 to an 88. Not only did he have one play in this game that was just inexcusable, like he catches a slant or a crossing route and runs behind the yard to gain. So like he had the first down. Not only did he run and get tackled behind the first down, but then he fumbled it. And you never move a guy this much for one play. He simply just hasn't been his old self this season. So he's going down to still obviously an elite tight end, but just not at that top level. And George Kittle has very clearly separated himself. And Kelce has not been blocking well at all. His sort of allure of being a good blocking tight end is completely derived off of his like 2016 or 2015 season when he kind of broke out as kind of a no-name guy, where he kind of had that chip on his shoulder. He blocked really well, but he hasn't graded out well as a blocker at all since then. And he's also 30 years old, by the way. So definitely stock down lately for Travis Kelce. Not to a like dramatic degree, but he's still a really good player. Don't get me wrong. Just not the elite best tight end in the NFL anymore. And then for the Patriots, these receivers are so bad. Time for them to go down. Philip Dorsett can't get open. Mohamed Sanu can't get open. Jacoby Myers can get open, but he can't catch. So those guys are all going down. That Mohamed Sanu trade is looking real bad. And then for the defense, couple rotational guys on the edge of the defense. Shalik Calhoun, John Simon. They've been playing well. Need to go up a little bit. Next up, Pittsburgh at Arizona. Deontay Johnson had a bit of a breakout game here. +1, 69 to a 70, showing off his athleticism. I think he's a guy that next year with Big Ben maybe could look real good. And then Duck Hodges is going to get some love here. He did play well this week. I'll give him some love. I still think he's a backup here. I think the hype is a little off the chains right now. He's being carried on the shoulders of defense and big plays by guys like Deontay Johnson and James Washington over the last few weeks. But he's making some plays on his own. The offensive line actually played pretty poor this week, surprisingly, against the Cardinals pass rush, and he was able to make some plays. So give him some credit. Did only have 150 passing yards, but taking care of business, as they say. Tight end Vance McDonald is having a real disappointing season. His blocking has been terrible, but he's not been involved as a receiver either. Joe Hayden, he's made a bunch of plays this year. I think 4 interceptions this year, but he's been really steady. Just been a part of what's actually turned into a top secondary in the league, really, behind a really good pass rush. And then for the Cardinals, Kyler Murray, definitely a pumped the brake, the last 2 weeks, pump the brakes moment. Just facing some really good pass rushes, some good secondaries. He just has not looked very good. I still don't have a whole lot of concerns about Kyler Murray. I mean, you got to keep in mind the talent he's working with here. This offensive line is just bad straight up, and he doesn't have very many good playmakers. So I don't have a lot of worries. He's looked a lot better than I think most people should have been able to expect this year. So he is going to come down here. His processor just, he needs to develop. You just can't make the reads fast enough. He threw three picks in this game. Really just guessing who was going to come open. And then Jalen Thompson has been a good kind of breakout free safety for them. A supplemental draft pick at free safety. So he's going up plus 167 to a 68. On to the Sunday night game, Seattle at the LA Rams. For the Seahawks, Josh Gordon has just not been good this year, really at all. He had a good week 1 performance. Or was it, I don't know if it was week 1 or whatever, but it was his first game of the year. He looked good for the Patriots. But ever since then, I mean, just he looks slow. He's actually not blocking as well as he normally has. Just hasn't been able to get open and be a mismatch problem as he has throughout his career. So he's maybe this team's third or fourth. I mean, he's definitely not better than Metcalf or Tyler Lockett right now, who, by the way, has been really quiet lately. Thought about lowering him, but I'm going to give him a little more time because I know he's been hurt. But you can make a case that Josh Gordon's actually this team's 4th best wide receiver. And then Quandre Diggs, looking like an excellent trade for this team. They've needed some safety help. Marquise Blair was actually playing pretty well, the rookie there, but Tedrick Thompson's on IR, I believe, and Bradley McDougald just hasn't been the same. So getting that veteran in there, Quandre Diggs, just been a good ad for this team. He had 2 picks against Jared Goff, and they were both pretty good. I mean, the first one, he totally jumped a slant route, which is really impressive. And then the other one was a big overthrow by Goff, but Diggs showed some good speed and ball skills to go get it. So, like what you see there. I've always liked Quandre Diggs. I thought he's been a little underrated. I thought that was a good trade to get him. And the Lions players were pissed when the team traded him. So he's just a good player. And then Shaquem Griffin continues to be a rotational player here. Nickel packages as a pass rusher. Played about 9 snaps this week, but 2 pressures. And you can tell, like, he's explosive. Never mind the one hand. Like, he can beat tackles and get around the edge. Then Bobby Wagner continues to struggle. Really bad game this week. Quite possibly the worst game of Bobby Wagner's career. You can easily point to the missed tackles this year. He's like tripled his missed tackles from the last 2 years, but was targeted 11 times in this game, gave up 11 receptions for about 160 yards, was just someone that the Rams had a lot of success going after, and he just hasn't been that elite cover guy this year. Still going to be one of the best linebackers in the NFL, and he's been a good player, but just not a good year for Bobby Wagner at all. And then Tyler Higbee, as we move over to the Rams, been a real solid tight end, especially the last couple weeks. Been a much more explosive receiver than I thought he was. So he's going up. He's kind of taking that job away from Everett, who I think is a good player as well, but Higbee's really impressed. And then Troy Hill, it continues to just be a win-win situation. He's been a really nice number 2 corner, and I say win-win situation because they traded away Marcus Peters, who's killing it for the Ravens. He's having one of his best years of his career for the Ravens. So both these guys are out there making plays for these teams, and Troy Hill, I don't know what his contract situation is like, and if he's up, that's just another big player that this Rams team is going to have a hard time retaining. But in about his 4th or 5th year of his career, Troy Hill has really emerged as a legitimate number 2 corner. And then the Monday night game, the Giants at the Eagles. Darius Slayton stays hot. Really versatile player. I mean, his release off the line is really nice. He can definitely fly. He roasted Ronald Darby in the second quarter of this game. Total steal for this team to get that. I don't want to say number 1 wide receiver. I feel like he's a good comp for him to me is Marvin Jones as a really potentially high-end number 2 wide receiver, but I still got to see a lot more before I'm ready to say that he could be like a true number one to the degree that I think of like Terry McLaurin, even though both these guys have had similar sort of breakout rookie seasons, both out of the NFC East. And then Mike Remmers continues to have a solid season at right tackle. He struggled at guard for the Vikings, but has been pushed back to right tackle, back with Coach Shermer here, and has been okay. Actually had a good game this week against that good Eagles pass rush. And then Marcus Golden. If we did a star of the week, it might have been him. He had 11 pressures in this game. He got to his 10th sack of the season. Now, his sacks don't quite meet his pressure rate, but that's been a good signing for the Giants. And he's really struggled in run defense, and that's never been something he's been very good at. Just not a lot of discipline and really effort as a run defender, to be honest. But when he gets to pin his ears back and be a pass rusher, he can be a nice player. I think they should try to re-sign him. You could do worse than him and Lorenzo Carter as your two edge guys, and then maybe they add Chase Young to the mix. Could be a big boost for them next year. Could honestly be one of the better D-lines in the NFL, honestly, if they add Chase Young to that mix. You got Chase Young, a good number one. You get some rotational guys in Golden and Carter, and then we know that D-line is really good. So then for the Eagles, Boston Scott kind of broke out this week. Looked like Darren Sproles out there for the Eagles, hitting the jukebox. He's an intriguing player. They need someone that can make some plays and kind of have that catch and run ability. They just need people that can catch the ball in general in Philadelphia. So Boston Scott emerging, and then Ronald Darby and Rodney McLeod continues to have just terrible seasons here. Darby reminds, he's been not just by name, but him and Bradley Roby are like the same player. Have had ups and downs throughout their career. Darby, to me, is a guy that's probably going to get paid somewhere based on his pedigree as a freak athlete and a guy that's had success at times. But he doesn't seem to have a care in the world what happens out there. He's just getting roasted this year. And same thing with Rodney McLeod. All right, so that's the Studs and Duds this week. I appreciate you guys dealing with my nasally voice. Again, if you made it this far, you might as well hit that like button. Definitely make sure you check out the roster on Madden. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm doing a Lamar Jackson film breakdown tomorrow, so that'll be a hell of a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, peace out, and enjoy your night. Cheers.